G'day, guys. This is the shipping news number 16. We're a little bit on the late side. I hope you won't mind once you look at what we've got in this particular package. I hope you guys actually take the time to actually look at some of the stuff this time. I know we get some people that support me, and I really, really like that. But you might only glimpse at stuff because you'll drown enough information. That's cool. I get it. But this issue, I think there's some really, really deep. There's something in there for everybody, but there's some stuff in there which is like super, super important. And I'm just going to give you a recap at the beginning of all the shipping news, so that you can get an idea of what we've actually got there, how it works, and how the best to get the best out of it. So my main story, which will also feature as my main story for this year, is the write-up of the research that I have done for Goldbridge Finance, which is a UK London hedge fund run by a guy called Tarek Hamoid. Tarek is an ex-Case Western employee. He's previously spoken out about the involvement of Credit Suissee in Mombasa and in the tuna trade. This is part of an ongoing situation, but mainly that case is kind of where I step into the whole Credit Suissee story breaking. In terms of that's because Andrew Pearce, who was the Credit Suisse banker, is a New Zealander, and that money was actually filtered through the Christchurch real estate market, and ties into a lot of other issues and things which I've been speaking about in terms of corruption in New Zealand from the 70s onwards. In fact, that's largely what Goldbridge Finance hired me to do. They've read my book State Secrets. They've read what I had to say about this particular guy called Jeff Walding, who effectively was running with a lot of people that generated a lot of really, really, really shady cash, which largely got pumped into businesses that were underwritten by banks that had their mates in those banks. And this is a model which we've seen in Credit Suisse take place. This is actually a model which we've seen take place during the Winebox inquiry, the 1995s of Fay Rich White Investments. Very, very super significant aspect of that, because, of course, Fay Rich White also ties into Stephen Jennings, who went to work for Credit Suissee in Switzerland when Fay Rich White fled off to Switzerland after the tax evasion scandal. And then, of course, Jennings went on to do the help privatise the former USSR, which was done with their man on the spot, a guy called Vladimir Putin. You might have heard of him beforehand. And they largely basically helped this guy get to the top. He went from being nowhere in St. Petersburg, and then they made him a lot of money and influence, and he went to the top. And that's largely because basically Putin was helping the West basically carve up the former USSR and get all those public assets and put them in people's private hands. So again, for people who are familiar with the case of the Bill Bowder story, I suggest you really have a look closely at this, and I suggest you also read the Der Spiegel account on the Bill Bowder story, because it pretty much all takes it and rips it to shred, and you start to realise once you understand that everything that's going on now is a direct product of that privatisation, and that privatisation model has actually destabilised Europe, and it's leading us literally to the brink of nuclear war. So I cover into all of that. I write into all these guys in the 80s. This is what I was doing for Queenbridge Finance. You'll see what's actually take place and play out in the market now. So I'm going to take you through some pretty amazing material, and we are going to... the problem with documenting this stuff is actually that I've got too much documentation. The material that I used for the Winebox inquiry, for example, consisted of 51 boxes, and I probably only got about 25% of that photographed on my phone, but to try and show you all those documents. But we'll try and find you some of the more choicer bits, and pretty much will show you the fact that the really significant thing about this whole Credit Suisse Bank is that all these stories beforehand, we've heard about the CIO trafficking drugs and destabilizing the African American community, all of these things. This is the whole reality of the Pandora Papers, the Paradise Papers, the Winebox Inquiry, the Gang of 20 Adventures. They've shown you that this is this literally has been all freaking true. The banks in collusion with intelligence agencies and organised crime have destroyed small businesses, allow that shady money to be pumped into businesses that were then bought out, their assets liquidated and streamed, that then those debts will collapse, and the end result, of course, has been not the legitimate investors were the ones that paid, along with the public when those events eventually fell over, and the banks themselves, because they've been doing not just to one or two or three, but hundreds and hundreds of subsidiary banks, so that when these all catch up and the banks fall over, the politicians step in and give their mates a get out of free jail card. And again, what you'll see in my report is this has been the consistent pattern where they have been caught. Whistleblowers have tried to blow the whistle on them. They've had the documentation, and then what's basically happened is that politicians go, oh no, that's not true, and we don't believe that's happening. And then it turns out that they actually were. But even afterwards, the events often get downplayed in the media, which is explained to you in the case of this guy actually has been a case of largely because these same guys pretty much destroyed our independent media, starting with print media at the bottom. And this is not just all random shit. This is actually working to a specific blueprint of economic warfare. So we'll be talking to you about that. I'll also be looking at the Ohio train crash. I'll be linking that to the production of depleted uranium rounds. And these are things which are actually, uranium's been turning up in the Ukraine since 2017. So that's 5 years before Russia's surprise war. I'd be a bit pissed off if my food source was being poisoned too. So again, we'll turn around and we'll take you over the story and we'll show you pretty much how the media failed. I mean, this was a case of there were fundamental basic questions which just didn't get answered or even looked at. And this, again, we'll link into that in terms of the clip that we show you from Amy Goodman's Seymour Hersh's interview on the Nord Stack pipeline. And, just pay a really close attention to in terms of, this is a guy that has won the Pulitzer Award, not once, but twice. And this is where he's allocated out. This is where all our actual journalists are ending up in Substacks and places because basically corporates don't want to actually know about journalists that actually do their job. Case in point, the recent collapse of radio stations in 98 FM. Again, what I said beforehand was that, well, no, you took this money from the government, you used it to push a policy that the government said, well, if you come and write about stories about policies that we think the public need to know about, which is not the government's story. And come on, there's some people out there, who I'm talking to, that this is not fine. And this is when we don't blow the whistle on ourselves, we're opening up a big can of whoop-ass. And this is pretty much what's happened now, is that some of these people have taken this money. Their election cycle's changing round now. Those radio stations are going under. That Labour government's not trying to actually bail them out. And so what we'll see now is all the people that have previously taken a little break after COVID that are now working in public relations will wait till Coulson Luxon gets in. And all those people that said, yeah, we're okay as journalists taking money from the government they can get to decide our stories. Tova O'Brien, Duncan Garner, bye! Ain't karma a bitch? And that's, and this is it. Look, again, to my media friends trying to say, oh, no, there's nothing wrong in the media. Come on, don't be stupid, okay? In the 2000s, what happened to the print industry in terms of the shady money being dumped into the print industry? So assets were bought out that were paid for way more than they were worth, and then those same companies that were bought out for way more than they were asset stripped, and then the end result was that they fell over. That was the end of all the local newspapers. Short of the Mountain Scene, which is now actually got a percentage of that's owned by Fairfax, I can't think of any local paper actually weekly. I can't even do that anymore. I do a once a year publication, for frick's sake. I can't afford to do anything else. And then after they did that, they moved on to the TV stations. And Cordia turned around and said, prove this whole idea that we'll actually do a TV system based on digital as opposed to analog. Most of you don't understand that Cordia is a New Zealand-owned government agency, but when you look at who's on the board of directors, it's completely stocked by corporate lobbyists. And these are the same 16 corporate lobbyists that have the swipe cards in Parliament, which none of you guys in the media have fucking called out or made it your mission to actually just constantly be on their asses, which is what your job is meant to do. So, bang, that was the end of local TV stations. Okay? And now, this is the final propagation. We're starting to see the radio stations get knocked out. And it's the same Look at it. It's the radio stations that are actually that are underwritten by banks, and of course, it won't be the bank that pays for those bad debts. So we'll be going into all of those things with Seymour Hirsch and looking at, aiming at Goodhouse, Seymour Hirsch, John Pelcher, the Project for a New American Century. These are all essential reading that if you want to think that you have an opinion, an educated opinion about the war in the Ukraine and the history of the war in the Ukraine, these are the writers, and these are not corporate writers. These are genuinely counterculture liberal writers that have got, as I said, John Pelcher Pulitzer once, Seymour Hirsch 2 Pulitzers. So these guys are the 007s of their careers. If you believe that you genuinely want to know what the story is, these are what you're writing for. And if you're not doing that, then you're not actually entitled to an opinion. Okay, I'm guessing the kind of people that don't know this stuff are squabbling over. Oh no, cocks! He's got a cock. He's coming into my toilet. Or, I mean, what I'm trying to say there is that we've got the rainbow community, which I'm cool. I don't want to say anything that just sounds like image laundry, but I'm basically saying I don't have a problem with gays, and I don't even want to get into where I'm at. But the point is, I get a problem when I see the rainbow community fighting amongst itself for stuff which, if they chose to act with each other with good faith and understand that nobody's out to try and take anything from any other, and there was an attempt to genuinely resolve some of these issues, I think it can be done. But all you're doing is just scrapping over shit, and then you're wondering why the public, who at the moment are looking at the food prices going up, your water prices are going up, your rental prices are going up, your general cost of living, your electricity is going up. So guess what? Guess what, guys? No one gives a shit about that stuff. And yet this is what our media thinks that we need to know about, as they are the ones that actually go out of their way to create us to be polarized. None of this is new. And again, if you're a journalist and involved in the media and have a background in history, you should know this stuff. Same if you're over the age of 40 and you lived in Rogernomics. So stop being dumb, okay? Stop forgetting the stuff that you've actually been exposed to. The reality is that our media has taken severe hits from corporates and by government, and by lack of funding will be withdrawn for ages. And this is spilling off into these issues that you're now covering, these identity political issues, which get people worked up because they go to the sense of our ego, which is tied into our child self, which is very easily triggered. What they don't go into is the adult issues and the adult conversations that we need to have, so that we're using the cerebral thing and we're not being always problem-driven, that we're also looking at being solution-driven. So again, we'll be looking at all of those bits and pieces there. I will be doing a little bit on the slash work. We'll be looking at, and again, this is the thing again, a lot of my friends who think they're very educated and run with the right people, they don't want to hear about geoengineering. Oh no, that's just climate denial. Well, no, it's not, because the things that we're talking about are, on one level, what we're seeing are things of people who can utilize this technology, which works much more effectively when you do have a delicate climate than when your climate's actually stable. In fact, these things love climate change. But the point is, you can use that situation to actually exploit the existing crisis and use it to benefit yourself, you and your group of mates financially. And this is, again, if you start to look on the issue of worldwide litigation, none of this is conspiracy stuff. This is stuff that's actually serious adults, serious people are having serious conversations about the ability, about what you can sue people for when governments and their mates act in a way that they withhold knowledge or they misuse publicly owned proper intellectual material. That's stuff that government's actually paid for that doesn't end up in the public sector. These are things that are actually starting to come through again. And again, ultimately, when we pull right back, the drum that I'm beating into you guys, and the drum that I beat to, is that I've only got 2 issues that I really give a fuck about, because my life is literally dependent on these things. One of them is the globalization, or the corporate globalization, which is way out of control. And if you went to the TPA and you're there to do more than eat your lunch, you start to realize these guys are going to affect our quality of our food, our ability to actually have a proper democracy, ability to have proper conversations. And it applies to the same with the military-industrial complex. Meanwhile, going back to my point of the stuff's been going on beforehand, In the 70s, you had during the what they call the years of lead in Italy, and this is just to give you an example, where you had extremist left wing and extremist right wing, create a situation where people were just everyday people were scared for their lives, and they were calling upon the state system, security system to give it more powers, and this went on for about 20 years. And then eventually they had corruption trials in Italy, and they discovered that NATO, the people who are very closely aligned with NATO, had actually been funding both the left wing and the right wing terrorists to generate what they called a politics of tension, which is where people would be again arguing so much on identity political issues, they wouldn't be looking at the fact that the industrialists were actually creaming the pie and they were getting everything they wanted, while the middle class and the working class were actually just being shafted, and they were being the two groups were being encouraged to be polarized and fight amongst each other. This is pretty much what's actually happened. And the last thing which I'll be talking about, and I'll do a little video for this down the road because I've got to put my thoughts together, but Vinny Eastwood, who I worked for 10, 11 years ago, has just been sentenced today that him and Billy Tikaha from the NZPPP party are going to be, look like they're going to jail. Now, there's multiple things going on here, which I'll cover in my video, but basically there is a little bit of a purge going on around at the moment where useful idiots are now being thrown under the bus. There's other people who are not useful idiots, but they were people that dared challenge the system. And again, we're going to be doing an interview at one point, which I'll play on Fresh FM, which I'll have the links to these as well, with Nanga from the Mad Cafe. And he's one of these people that have been sort of challenging the system and the way that the media portrays the story. Oh, he's just one of these new age little hippies. Oh, he's just talking nonsense. Now, I know Nanga very well, and I don't consider him to be a legal expert by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's a amazing artist. And again, what we're lacking from a film, what's happening with our counterculture has been captured, and all the things that counterculture are trying to tell us are being buried while we're pushing this new libertarian agenda, which again I'll get into about with Vinny and my recording, post on him. But the end result of this counterculture idea is that we're losing our ability to understand art, and art is actually the thing that makes us think. And again, we get into the whole realm of AI, and this is the real danger about AI. I don't need to draw a painting or hire someone to go and do some amazing sketch. I'll just get the AI to do it for me. So I don't need to value thinkers anymore. I can get a machine to do so. I don't need to think anymore. And this is pretty much what a lot of our technology is doing. It's especially in terms of things like social media, where you end up in an echo chamber. And most people use that technology, including some very, very good friends of mine that are meant to be very high-ranking public relations people. Again, you need to get with the technology people and understand how it works before you start commenting on it. And I don't think a lot of you guys do. So you haven't actually realised this echo chamber has been created, which has, again, been a wonderful way to kind of, you put the right people in, then you start, that you get somebody like Vinny, I was going to say Vinny, but you get a counterculture thing kind of going. You get someone that's actually saying left-wing things and everyone starts listening to it. Then you replace them with a right-wing person, but all the algorithm is only listening to that. So then the algorithms start shifting if they're being programmed by not just that one person, but there's a few other people doing the same. And this is what Winston Peters is going to be doing in this election. So we'll also do a bit of an election issue looking at the use of Winston Peters introducing the Cambridge Analytics. In fact, what I'll simply be doing is I'll be rerunning a story I did in 2017 about this. And everyone went, oh, see, nothing happened. What we didn't get was that Cambridge Analytics used the last election for the reconnaissance. This is where things, the mischief and the mayhem, really start to come out, and where the whole polarisation. And because at the end of the day, Winston to get back into power, it's not about him getting enough votes to win. He's also got to make the other guy lose more votes so that his gap is closer to getting that percentile. So all of these guys, again, that are tapping into issues that people had during the COVID, what they're trying to do is do what Labor did with the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, is that by creating a artificial grassroots movement, which is what Andy Gilmore did with the Cambridge Analytics, you can then create a cascade effect, which has an impact upon demographics, about 15% swing that way, or 15 to 25% swing that way. But once you've got that 15 to 25% cascade effect, which is what it's called, then the rest of the votes just come along like a slot machine. Ching, 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 ching. So we'll be covering that as well. And again, with the whole issue of Vinny and the situation, what I want to get into of that story is looking at how Libertarianism politics has moved into areas that originally were the home of counterculture, which is that anti-establishment, but ultimately left-wing liberal, anti-military, industrial, anti-corporate, and how libertarianism has been driven into that area. It's captured that market, and then once it's got that market, it's actually swung it right. So really, the big issues that we should be talking about don't get discussed, as instead we're fossicking on this, we're playing in the sandpit, toddling like toddlers. So that is my shipping news for this issue. Please have a good look at some of the stuff in there because I put a lot of energy and effort into this. The other thing which I also asked you guys to do, tell people about me. Tell people about me, to get people to come on and actually ask to be pay a measly $100 a year so that you're actually getting. Now, I'll make this really, really crystal clear. When I and Vinny worked, why we were independent counterculture media, none of us were asking to get into power. You know, and I nearly went down that mistake that Vinny went down with those guys at NCP myself. And I stepped back and went, no, the journalist's job is not to be another person saying, vote for me, put money in my koa. You know? I'm a person that basically calls out everybody when they're wrong. The left wing, the right wing, the Greens, the National, the Axe Party, the Maori Party, all of them. I've called out all of them because I'm an independent journalist. And I can give you information which is not shaped from me trying to get you to think in a certain way, but just giving you the facts and working the story and the methodology. So I'll also be doing, at the end of the year, some workshops basically about teaching people how to be good researchers. And again, you know, my argument is like, screw your fake news. It's if you teach people how to read a news story properly, fake news is never going to last very well. So that's, again, one of the things I point out in my story about the Ohio train crash, because I point out that the really basic journalism stuff that should be there, which is real 101. So don't try and say, oh, no, the media's fine and there's no problems with the media. Yeah, we are. You're getting dingbats who are ego-driven in the newsroom that don't know about fair and balance, that don't understand about working the facts and letting them come to the story, and that's on both the left wing and the right wing, and they don't even know their standard skill of arms. They don't know their craft. And they're no better than the dickhead that finds Google and thinks that he's a researcher. Oh, I'm a researcher. I've got Google. Duh, is my attitude to that. You're like, okay? So if you're an independent journalist and you are telling people vote for this person and your only research skills are actually finding what you can find on Google because you don't go do any field trips, you don't go to the archives, you haven't even been taught how to use the archives, you don't use all the different databases which aren't found online because you've got to go to different places to access them company. You don't use the company files. You're not a researcher. You're a Google idiot. Go to Counterspin or one of these other twits. You know, again, Counterspin. You think you're getting alternative media from a guy that actually boasts that his business partners were the people that overthrow the Whitlam government. A guy that's got pictures of himself as a part of a motorbike or hanging out with a motorbike club that actually is part of the Hells Angels. Now, these are the people that go on all the time. Communism, anti-China, anti-China. Last time I pretty much would check, the meth industry was being driven by China and that was being distributed by the gangs. So a big fucking hypocrite. And that actually goes out to you, Mr. J. Yeah, and I know you'll be reading this because you'll be going, oh, why doesn't he like me anymore? Well, maybe it's because you kept on going hanging around P. And I decided that you were basically a hypocrite. You know, going to go, oh, it's all about China. Yeah, well, you know, this is why you guys are so full of shit. And so, again, independent media people that actually walk their talk, they don't go on about Freemasons like my good friend Vinny did, and then end up being surrounded by Freemasons because these are the people that offer him a platform and these are the people that offer him money right up until the point that he's now facing jail. And I'm not, because I don't get fucking dicked around because I actually do my due diligence and I check my facts. And that's what you always get from me. Don't always get the best spelling. I'm sorry, I don't have the money to provide sub editors and make my rough little organic apple a nice shiny glistening item. But you know you can rely on me for an impartial viewpoint where I let the facts speak. And you know you can rely on me. You know I'm not going to say vote left, vote right. We don't do endorsements here. We just give you the news. So I hope you enjoy this particular shipping news. And there is going to be some other stuff, but This is the raw cut. And again, please, I said, tell people about them. Get them to come and pay the $100 to me. And the thing is, a really, really important one to stress you guys, and if you come this far, it means that you probably do value what I have to say. I do research. You can approach me to do research, and if you're one of my subscribers, if it's a question or two, there is no cost. I will say, oh, what do you think about this? I'll drop you a link. I'll tell you a little yes, no. That's all free. That's part of what you pay for when you have me for the service. You can actually also send me to do particular mission projects, and I will do extensive missions like I'm doing at the moment for class action for litigation concerning the slash. It'll be another 4 years before that really comes to fruition. And as I've done for Goldbridge in London, I am a professional researcher. I have spent 6 years in the military working for with military intelligence and artillery intelligence and counterintelligence, force intelligence group. I did that while I was at university, got my degree, academy science, history, political science. While I walked straight out of university, went to work for Canada University as a freelance historian, worked for Westpac Research as a researcher. I am trained in multiple disciplines and multiple methodologies. That's what you get when you come to me, is somebody that actually is a professional, not playing amateur hour or going out there because they're just trying to get you to vote for whatever sleazy little agenda they run while they tell you against don't anti-China, anti-communists, do some more pee. Yeah, that's about right, isn't it, you fucking thieving scumbags? So all right, so that's what we've got in there, and so we've got heaps of really good stuff, and we're going to be doing more. On that note, I'm now Fresh FM. We're stepping things up a wee bit, so we're going to be doing much more stuff in the community. We're going to be working very hard to basically make sure that we are reaching out to get people unified and actually talking about these big issues and addressing the military, out of a check military industrial complex. We're going to be using it to make sure that we deal to this corporate scumbaggery. So we'll be doing that. I will be doing a lot more work as a private research client. So that's going to actually give me the resources I need to actually step things up. I'm still fairly limited for the next year or so about how much I can do. I'm waiting on a surgery list. So unfortunately, if I do go beyond a certain point, then doors get close to me, and I'm actually no better off than I was even if I do. So there is a limit to what I am doing this year, but we are working towards the process, and we will be taking this. There is a plan. There is a plan, Stan. So come and check me out. I don't care really too much about whether I get thousands and thousands of you actually coming to my page. I've been doing this for about 30 years, so I can pretty much go all around the South Island, which is my little beat and the only beat that I give a damn about. And I can talk to any of the particular mayors or politicians, or it's like I may not have the biggest voice, but at the end of the day, people do actually listen to me. And the media is not, as I kept on always saying to Vinny, how many people listen to you isn't actually the real issue. The issue is whether or not you're getting the right people listening to you, and that they're actually acting on that. I'm rather pleased to think I actually am. It's said at the end of the day, I'm getting hired by the City of London to actually investigate Credit Suissee and scumbag money launderers who are, again, in the same business. In fact, there's a whole interesting story, which we don't have time for, about how the people that are actually have those CIA links and the people that have those Chinese links to the drug trade are basically the same people. But, overall, what we're seeing, this Credit Suissee story breaks out, is all these stories that years for years that the main, Gary Webb, the Dark Alliance, Les Coleman, whistleblower for the Defence Intelligence Agency, who talked about the octopus. These stories are all now coming out in the open, and they are exposing all the shadiness. So all the people that are running around, go, don't vote for Labour. That's voting for the communists. Well, I personally don't vote for any bloody person at the moment. Seriously, don't. And I know some of my friends go, oh, that's terrible. Democracy. Well, democracy is more than putting a piece of paper in the box to give your authority away so that some other person will actually just shaft you for the next 4 years. They did that. Uruguay is always the example I point to. People in Uruguay suddenly woke up one day and went, you know what? Doesn't matter who we vote for, we get fucked. So they went and did a vote strike, and their voting went down to 29%. Vote no confidence, right? 29%. They then ended up with the president of Uruguay, a man that drove to work in his Volkswagen, lived in a common house, and his government have extracted the light's not quite, they're not out of the woods, but effectively that government extracted Uruguay out of the shit and its indebtedness and slavery to the mining companies that previous people had actually put it in beforehand. So again, my point is, anyone that says vote this or vote that is going, what? Just carry on the status quo, kicking the left ball or kicking the right ball. That's really worked for us so well. But also at the same time as going, at the same time, when we go back to the origins of socialism, which I do like to talk about, and like Norman Kirk, I don't believe in a fully embraced socialist system goes too far. You end up with a form of totalitarianism that goes from being communism to corporate fascism. In fact, that's what Leninism was. It was a public-private partnership, similar to what Jacinda Ardern used to quite regularly talk about while she buddied up with BlackRock and things like with the TPPA. So, all the, Jacinda's a communist. Yeah, only in the vagueliest Leninist. At the end of the day, she was a corporate fascist. Just like Luxton is a corporate fascist. Just like the people that finance the Treasury, who ultimately tell Labour and National what they can and they can't do because of the amount of debt that we've actually placed ourselves in. So, yeah, but the point is, the ideas of the socialist orientation that these people go, well, they don't talk about Norman Kirk, and they don't talk about the fact that during the years that we had a socialist-leaning government, we had the highest rating in the OECD, education, reading, literature, health, education. We were at the top. We had low levels of debt levels. Everybody had a quarter acre home, where that was a realistic goal that you could actually expect to get into. You had know that you could work in a mine that wasn't going to get collapsed, and if it did, there was going to be accountability for it. You only would have to work 40 hours, and one person would be able to work, another person would be able to stay at home and make sure that your kids weren't growing up to be demented little delinquents. That's what socialism did. So all these guys go on to this alternative media, which they have absolutely bastardized and dragged from counterculture, saying, no, we've got to challenge the status quo. They've just dragged it straight back into the mud. And then they're going, oh, no, don't vote for them, vote for us. Same shit. Kicking the left ball or kicking the right ball. We've got to start to understand, if you're genuinely an alternative independent media, you've got to start to really understand what socialism means. And stop listening to dickheads who didn't even get out of school, and they want to tell you that, yeah, listen to this, because we're great researchers. We can use Google real good. Ugh. Yeah. We need to get into this, start realising, we need to start being well read, because the people that you're listening to who fit into that category, like no training, want you to vote, basically come from really sleazy, shady backgrounds, aren't too particularly bright, in my opinion, but that's okay, we'll leave that one off the list. They're not teaching you actually how to educate. They're just feeding you a lunch of shit that feeds that something's wrong. You can feel the rain on your head, and that's not rain, it's urine. But you need to start to go, just because the media is shit doesn't mean that we have equally shit standards. And you need to start familiarising yourself with proper independent journalists that aren't trying to get you to vote for a particular party or asking you to repeat the status quo. They're actually challenging the status quo itself. This is Ben Vidgen on the Shipping News. Also come and check me out on the Deadline Report, or always hosted on my website, Postman Productions, Deadline Publishing. And of course, I said, do look forward to our interview publication, because we will be doing a massive exposure looking at the Credit Suissee link to New Zealand white-collar crime and bank fraud, going all the way back to the 70s, the Gang of 20s, into the Wine Box Inquiry, the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers. New Zealand's always been there, and I've always been there covering the stories and been proven time after time after time that I do my research. Take care.